Hello, I'm Father Mitch Pacwa, and welcome to Ewtn Live, where we bring you guests from around the world. Today, we're going to talk about how many people, especially in academia, love to attach society's past sins, including slavery, to the Catholic Church as a means to attack and discredit the Church, and by extension to discredit all of Christianity. But our guest tonight is here to expose the myth that the Catholic Church tolerated or even endorsed slavery in past centuries. In addition, he'll point out that slavery is not quite so much a thing of the past as people think it is going on now. He is the director of the Institute for Faith and Freedom, and he teaches political science at Grove City College in Pennsylvania. His newest book is called The Worst of Indignities, The Catholic Church on Slavery. Please welcome our guest tonight, Dr. Paul Kengor. Dr. Paul, how are you?
I'm good, Father Mitch, and it's good to be with you again. Thanks a lot.
Great to have you on another extremely important topic. This is a topic that we have a lot of discussion about in our culture. Slavery has been gone from the law books in the United States since the 1860s, right after the Civil War. And it was a horrible experience. But the Catholic Church had taught against slavery well before the Americas were known to Europeans. And your book, The Worst of Indignities, is one more fine historical work laying out this issue of the Church's teaching on why enslaving people is so wrong. Thank you for writing it. It's a nice style too, so folks can, get into it. It's very accessible. You've got footnotes for those who want to do more research, but you lay out your argument straightforwardly, and I like that very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's start off about the history of the Church's teaching in regards to slavery. What is it that we see in the Bible when the Old Testament talks about slavery and legislates it right after the Ten Commandments? You see that. What's going on with the issue of slavery in the Old Testament and then in New Testament times?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much you could say, Father Mitch, right, about the mentions in the Old Testament. In fact, among other things, that helps to show modern Americans, or at least it ought to show them, that slavery is not a sin original to America, right?
No.
I mean, scholars estimate that slavery goes back 8,000, 10,000 years. I mean,
Yeah.
ancient Mesopotamia. And if you want to know where ancient Mesopotamia was, go to the book of Genesis, and it talks about the confluence of the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers. Mm-hmm. And what it's describing there is actually the Garden of Eden. All right. So if you want to know where slavery began, it doesn't start, it starts pretty quickly, after the Garden of Eden. All right. So yeah. This is a scourge as old as humanity itself. Pope Pius X called it the worst of indignities.
Yeah, I was going to add, there's even evidence for enslavement of people in the Stone Age, before Mesopotamian civilization, in the Stone Age in Europe. People that were captured in war were not always killed. Apparently, some of them were also enslaved in one of the first battles, big battles of pre-civilized human beings. So it's very ancient.
Yeah, and look at all the references to the Jews being taken off into captivity, right? By the Egyptians, let my people go. By the Neo-Babylonians, Nebuchadnezzar. I mean, It's thousands of years old. And I noted that in the start of the book, I quote Thomas Sowell, who's really a brilliant African American scholar, and he points out, he says, what's so unique about America when it comes to slavery is not that we had slavery, because basically pretty much every country and culture, empire did, but that we fought this vicious civil war to abolish slavery. And in fact, it was a civil war where upwards of 600,000, in fact, scholars today think it might even be 700,000 people died. And these were largely white American boys killing white American boys over the issue of slavery. If it's 600,000 to 700,000, that's more than all the combined deaths in all the wars in the history of America. If you take all the American dead in World War I, World War II, Korea, 50,000 dead, Vietnam, 50,000 dead, add them all up, I mean, you have to do that to come close to the number of deaths in the Civil War. And also, 600,000, 700,000 dead in the American Civil War, that was out of a population at the time in America of only about 20 million people. Mm-hmm. So, what makes us unique is what we went through to end it. And backing up even further, I mean, I'm talking to you from my home state of Pennsylvania. When Abraham Lincoln said in Gettysburg, right, that was 1863, he said 7 years ago, that's 87 years, it would take you back to July 4th, 1776. He said, our forefathers put forth the proposition that all men are created equal. So people who say, well, the Declaration talked about all men being created equal, and yeah, the founders condemned slavery and they said it was wrong, even though a bunch of them had slaves. But what did they do to end it? Well, they couldn't end it on July 4th, 1776, because they would have lost half the colonies. They were in the process of declaring separation in a revolutionary war from Great Britain. So it would take Lincoln later to take the principle, right, the proposition that all men are created equal, and carry that forth to all Americans, including Black Americans. Mm-hmm. But these things in history, they take some time. Before our Civil War in the 1860s, the Brits under Wilberforce in the 1830s abolished slavery, and 400 years before that, 1434, 1435, we have statements from popes like Eugene IV, December 1434, January 1435, Sicut Dudum, condemning slavery way back then, 400 years before the Brits even abolished it. So it's a much more complicated subject, I think, than people realize.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it's not only 400 years before slavery was abolished in Britain or United States. It was something that was made. It was a papal bull that put automatic excommunication with no possibility of forgiveness until you did reparations to the person enslaved. You had to set them free, return them to their land, and restore their property before you could get absolved.
Yeah.
And this is 1435. Now,
isn't that an amazing thing? Now think about that. That's 400 years before Wilberforce and the Brits abolished the slave trade. That is, if I'm doing my math right, 57 years before Columbus in 1492. Okay, and so right there in 1435, Sicut Dudum is the name of the papal bull. So imagine this. And by the way, the bull is called Against the Enslaving of Black Natives in the Canary Islands.
Right.
Okay. Against the enslaving of Black natives in the Canary Islands. So it's even noting the race of the people who are being enslaved. And the Pope there, as you said, he's calling for excommunication of anybody who engages in slavery, from common people to princes. And then in addition to that, and now people listen closely to this, all right? The church called for reparations to be made to the person who was enslaved. So this idea of reparations isn't something new in America in the 2020s in California. No. All right, the Catholic Church was 600 years out ahead on this. And for people who might find this hard to believe, and they think about in America from a political perspective. Look from a theological perspective. When you go to confession and you confess your sins, the priest will ask you to make reparation for your sin. Now, given that the church declared slavery a sin, an evil, it was only natural, right, for the church in turn to say that you should make reparation for it. So our church was calling for that in the 1400s. And there are people today, and you could Google and look it up, scholars today in journal articles, refereed academic journal articles, who claim that the Catholic Church didn't get around to condemning slavery till, late 1800s, maybe under Leo the 13th,
right.
Maybe even Vatican II, right? They're off by about 500 years. And really, it's kind of unconscionable that they're really that far off, because the information is all out there.
The other thing, too, is it's not just that Pope Eugene was an outlier. He was part of an ongoing magisterium that usually, as a matter of fact, for sure, every century after that, the popes condemned slavery. You include, for instance, one that I think is one of the best statements against slavery by Pope Paul III. It was just 100 years after Eugene. And talk a little bit about that, because the context there was after the Americas had been discovered and after the Atlantic slave trade had begun and the enslavement of Native Americans had done. Talk a little bit about that section.
Yeah, that one's called Sublimus Deus, and it was issued in 1537. So for people who start America, the 1619 Project, again, Columbus 1492, the transatlantic slave trade started in 1444. And as I said, 1434, 1435, we got two statements already from Eugene IV there. But Pope Paul III, 1537. Yeah, that one, Father Mitch, that's one of my favorites.
Yes.
And he has an amazing line in there where he calls for, he speaks out against slavery and the enslavement of people for I'm quoting this off the top of my head. This isn't exactly verbatim, but it's close. For all people yet or later to be discovered by Christians.
Yes. Right.
So you will hear people say, well, all right, maybe the church condemned slavery, and maybe as early as Leo the 13th, right, 1890 or something like that. But it was only against, if Christians were taken as slaves. Not true. Right. Absolutely and categorically false. You have a statement in 1537. This is like 500 years ago, right? Say all people yet to be discovered by Christians. I mean, that should cover, pretty much just about everybody. And so our church was saying that way before any other institution. And here we're talking about papal statements, bulls, encyclicals. But in the book, I go back to the Council of Agda in the year 506. I mean, there were church councils in the 500s, 600s, 700s. By the way, that's about the time that Muhammad is alive and the Quran is being printed. And, the Quran, Surah 3350, says flat out, God speaking, allegedly, he says to Muhammad, prophet, right? Says to him, prophet, you are allowed to take as booty you're allowed to take as booty any slave girls that you capture. So that's what's being said in the rest of the world. The Great Wall of China being built.
By 3350, you mean Surah 33.
That's right, Surah 3350.
Or verse 50. Yeah.
Yes, so Surah 33, so the chapter 33, verse 50.
Yes.
Correct.
And, one of the, in fact, the African slave trade had been going on for 200 years before the Portuguese got involved, but it was a slave trade of Muslims capturing non-Muslims, usually animist and native religion people, and bringing them up to Istanbul, the capital of the Turkish Empire. That
That's
slave
right.
trade was through Timbuktu, had been going on for a couple hundred years. It was in the 1400s, as you mentioned, the Portuguese get involved. And this is, and then after that, everybody else came to the Americas. So,
Well, from about the year 1500 to 1800, there were about 1 to 1.25 million white Northern Europeans who were slaves in Northern Africa in that period.
yes,
So
that's right.
these were white European slaves
Right.
who were owned by black Africans in Northern Africa during that time.
And of course, it wasn't just slavery based on race. Black Africans enslaved other black Africans.
That's right.
In even larger numbers because they were there.
And that's more recent. In fact, if you Google U.S. State Department report on modern slavery in the Sudan, so you will see in the 2000s, this still ongoing scourge of, in this case, black African Muslims capturing, conquering, and enslaving black African Christians in the Sudan. And in fact, I hate doing all this race stuff, but let me give you some more numbers on this. The transatlantic slave trade, which begins about the year 1444, goes on for about 400 years. You're talking at least 10 million black African slaves during that period, treated horribly, right? Horribly.
Yes.
Less than 5% of them, less than 5% went to North America. The majority were slaves to the Spanish Empire, Portugal, the Dutch, and guess which country had the most? Brazil.
Brazil, yes.
Brazil. And Brazil didn't get around to ending slavery until 1888. Now, I've never been to Brazil, but I've seen pictures, and from what I know, it's not made up of a bunch of, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Northern Europeans. All right? So the point here is that, again, this is what really makes slavery so evil and so hideous is that it's actually involved all cultures and all people throughout history. And the American experience, too. Let me add one more kind of fact that'll surprise people. The 1619 Project by the New York Times and Nicole Hannah-Jones, there's a book that came out in 2007, and I don't think the authors even had any idea how kind of important this date they identified was. The book is called White Cargo. It was published by New York University Press. Very good book, scholarly work. And they noted the year 1618. Now, at that point, no one's even thinking 1619. And they said 1618 is really when slavery began in America. It was the start of 300,000, roughly, white indentured servants, white Brits, owned by other white Brits that were sent to America as indentured servants. Now, to be clear, they weren't treated as harshly, by and large, as the black Africans that came over, but they were often treated quite cruelly. They were whipped, they were chained, they were auctioned. But those were the first slaves that came over in 1618. And then 1619 started black Africans who came to America. But again, less than 5% of the transatlantic slave trade came to North America. The leading country was Brazil, of all places.
And when we look at it being just 5% of the African slave trade, we still can see how absolutely horrible this was.
Yeah.
And one of the considerations I've had is, the Christians who lived here, this was settled, the colonies were settled by Christians. The vast majority were Protestant, and the different colonies were run by different religions. So Georgia, the two Carolinas, and Virginia were Anglican colonies. New England was Congregationalist or Puritan up in Massachusetts. Rhode Island was a Baptist colony. New Jersey was a Presbyterian colony. These were the folks that settled in the Americas. And I have a strong hunch, I think it'd be a good area to research further, that these Christians who bought and sold slaves throughout the 13 colonies knew that it was contrary to their Christian morals. They knew it. And
Right.
the only way they could justify doing something that they knew was wrong, I mean, the most important event of the Old Testament was the Israelites' freedom from slavery in Egypt.
Yeah.
So, knowing that, they had to come up with the idea that, well, African people are inherently inferior. And because they're inferior, they deserve to be enslaved. That was exactly the argument in the Dred Scott decision.
Right.
Back, where the Supreme Court made slavery the law of the land, not unlike the way they had done with the abortion law. That abortion became a decree by the Supreme Court, so also was slavery. And they had to put in there African descent people can't be citizens because they're inherently inferior. And racial bigotry went with it as a way to assuage conscience, that people knew this was wrong. Contrary to Christian teaching, it's a sin against the seventh commandment. That's Catholic teaching, that you steal somebody's freedom from them and their property. You're a thief to have slaves.
Yeah, the Dred Scott decision, right? I mean, comparable to Roe v. Wade in the sense of denying the humanity. In Roe's case of the unborn child, and in Dred Scott of a black person, right?
Yep. Exactly.
Denying their very humanity. That's exactly right.
This is something that we talk in this area. The author of the Dred Scott decision was Roger Taney. He was a Catholic who rejected the papal teaching. Just, I think it was 1839, that Pope Gregory XVI repeated the condemnation of slavery and the automatic excommunication.
That's another great statement. Yeah, the
it really
1839 one. Yeah, it really is. And it's important to point out too that so these Christians and these Catholics who were doing this, they were failing to follow the faith, right? Yes. So you will hear people say, "Oh, well, they were Catholic, they were Christian. How could they, almost as if the church or the faith is to blame." No, the church and the faith, right? They laid out clearly what you should and shouldn't do, right? Right. Jesus laid out clearly what you should and shouldn't do. So these people are Christians and Catholics who are failing to live up to the faith. Now, at the same time, in America, the abolitionist movement was spearheaded by Christians, and look at somebody like John Brown, who is some people consider him the first terrorist. Right, in America. He was a militant, and John Brown, Harper's Ferry, against slavery, and he was radicalized or energized, moralized by witnessing the death of his preacher, Elijah Lovejoy, and he stood there and gave this fiery speech, John Brown, saying, "I swear I will vindicate, I will by God spend the rest of my life fighting slavery until my grave." And so he was a case who heroically, aggressive, militantly, people say went overboard. This wasn't Martin Luther King Jr., right, with peaceful civil disobedience. No. But for every John Brown, there were 100 peaceful, Protestant Christians who were leading the abolitionist movement. And backing it up to the founders, even folks like George Washington, who had over 300 slaves in his possession on Mount Vernon, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, they are on the record again and again saying that they knew that slavery was wrong. And they wrote letters, Washington to Lafayette, Robert Morris, other people. They sponsored legislation trying to end slavery. And people forget this. By the year 1800, the Continental Congress had already banned the importation of slavery. Almost every state in the Union had taken steps to abolish slavery by the early 1800s. I think South Carolina ended up flipping around 1804. But people act like there was nothing done between 1776 and the Emancipation Proclamation. That's not true. Right. It wasn't easy to end it, but America was one of the first countries that did, and ultimately through the Civil War.
Yes, and this is a very important process. I brought up Roger Taney partly to point out that as a Catholic who switched parties because he was a slave owner himself, he switched to the Democrat Party because they were the party of slavery.
Yeah.
He was absolutely in favor of that, and he cared more about preserving his wealth and political influence in favor of slavery than he did about the papal teaching. And that also is exactly parallel to those Catholics who support abortion as a right, that just as Taney had supported slavery contrary to the excommunication, contrary to church teaching, we see the same thing going on in the pro-life movement versus the pro-abortion movement. And Catholics who support it are no different in their ethics than Roger Taney was.
Well, I probably shouldn't make this partisan comment, but also in the case of abortion, those Catholics have gone into the Democratic Party, like Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi, because that's the party that's the home to pro-choice Catholics. During the Civil War and in the 1840s, 1850s, 1860s, so the Republican Party was the party of abolition. It was founded as the anti-slavery party, and Abraham Lincoln is the founder of the party, and he literally gave up his life for the cause of abolishing slavery.
And the thing with that, I think that's important. The Democratic Party has completely changed on slavery. They no longer, they're against it. They're against bigotry. They stand firmly for racial justice. And that's a major conversion especially if read the Lincoln-Douglas debates. Douglas was the Democrat candidate, Lincoln the Republican. And you see how Douglas is arguing strongly for slavery because the Supreme Court declared them inferior. That has been rejected by that party. And it's very important to see that the kind of work of Christians like Martin Luther King Jr. and others going all the way back worked hard to change hearts and minds on that moral issue. This is not only itself an issue, but it is a model for how hearts and minds can be changed. And people can have conversion, and groups and political platforms can also have conversion. They have in the past, and they can again. This is important.
Yeah, often you have to change the hearts and the minds before you can even change legislation, right?
Right.
And the pro-life movement argued that for a long time. That, in fact, there were a lot of us in the pro-life movement that thought, Roe v. Wade's never going to be overturned, right? Yeah. The best we could do is we could change hearts and minds. And we did get to a point, even with Roe not yet overturned, where I think we got under 1 million abortions per year. And at one point, it was about 2 million a year. And, under 1 million a year while the population hit like 330 million people. So as a percentage of population, that was really, really, really good, right? That was great progress. By the way, I would add here something that would surprise people on the slavery issue around the time of the Confederacy. we are now in the process in America of canceling Christopher Columbus, right? And Columbus Day is now verboten in some circles. And we're now instead celebrating what we call Indigenous Peoples Day on Columbus Day. In fact, our President of the United States is doing that as well. Well, I got news for you, okay? There were Native American tribes in America who owned Black African slaves. And I talk about the 5 so-called civilized tribes, the Choctaw, the Creek, the Seminoles, the Cherokee. They all owned Black African slaves in America. And some of them supported the Confederacy during the Civil War. And they were often brutal slave masters. I mean, they would cut the foot off of a slave if a slave escaped in order to serve as an example to others. They continue to have slaves even after the Civil War ended. And today, Father Mitch, there are Black Americans who are descendants of those Black slaves that were owned by Native American tribes who have lawsuits against those tribes to this day. And this is something that is not talked about during Indigenous Peoples Day. They're running around canceling Columbus, throwing spray paint on Columbus, and also they're going up and down the West Coast, tearing down statues of Junipero Serra, throwing red paint on Junipero Serra, the founder of the missions in California, who, by the way, Pope Francis canonized when he was in America several years ago. But I got news for you, folks, all right? If you want to cancel those guys and instead put up on a pedestal the Native Americans, you better do a little research on the Native Americans, all right? Because there ain't anybody who's squeaky clean in this whole business.
This is the reality. It is a human problem, a sin problem. It's not the problem of one race alone. It is a human problem. The Lakota Sioux had enslaved some of the other tribes of people who didn't have horses. And this is history. We need to recognize it's not about a particular group. It's about the truth that you don't steal, and you don't steal people. You don't steal their freedom. You don't steal their property, and you don't kill the innocent. These are principles, and human beings are made better by these principles. That's what we are arguing for here. Following the principles that God gives us makes us better. Now, we have to take a break right now. We're going to come back to you and also to our audience to see if they have any questions or comments, so please stay with us. We are studying a fine book called The Worst of Indignities, the Catholic Church on Slavery, written by our guest, Dr. Paul Kengor, PhD. And if you would like to get it, you can go to ewtnrc.com, ewtnrc.com, where it is item A312. A312, and you can get that there, and it's really well done and great book. You ready for a question?
Sure.
Let's start off with David in Michigan. David, what can we do for you?
Hi, Father Mitch. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
My question is about, there is a New York Times journalist who recently published a book. Her name is Rachel Swarns, and the title of the book is The 272, The Families Who Were Enslaved and Sold to Build the American Catholic Church. I have not read the book, but from what I understand, she claims, and the reviews say it's a well-researched book, etc., is that Georgetown University had slaves.
Yes.
And not only did they have slaves, but they sold slaves to fund the expansion of the university. And she claims, I guess, ultimately the Catholic Church. So I would like to understand what is the real story about this, and if your author can comment about that.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's a great question.
It is. So I'm not familiar with that book. I haven't read that book, or at least didn't read it for this book, because I was working on this book about a year or so ago. But yeah, I'm familiar with the Georgetown case for sure. And Georgetown University officially apologized for that, for the ownership of those slaves that the Jesuit order had there at Georgetown. And I didn't dig into it much. I just took it on its face and assumed that Georgetown apologizing for it, that they were in the wrong for it. But again, the point would be that if they did do that, then they went against the church's official teaching. And also, I point out in the book that there were entire orders that were found 600 years before that. Peter Nolasco, St. John de Matha, the ransomer. And these were orders that were actually found for the explicit purpose of liberating slaves, and that's around the year 1200. So I would urge people who point out those wrongs against Georgetown, as they should, and I acknowledge them in the book as well, go back about 600 years and see what some entire other orders were doing that. You're not going to see any New York Times talking about any of those folks. You're not going to see him talking about Peter Claver. You're not going to see him talking about Montesinos in Francisco de Vitoria and the Salamanca School and what they were all doing with the discovery of international law and the slave trade in the 1400s and 1500s. So those things all way predate Georgetown, and to Georgetown's credit, they acknowledged that was wrong, and they've apologized for it.
Not only has Georgetown and the Society of Jesus apologized, they have contacted the descendants of those slaves, and they are in the process of doing reparations to the monetary, financial reparations, and they're doing that in connection with the descendants of those slaves. It's an ongoing relationship, and down the road, I'm hoping to do a program on that topic specifically, because
it could be too, Father Mitch. Like I said, I didn't look into it, because I just went with what Georgetown said about it. But oftentimes in these cases in states and areas where slavery was legal, sometimes these different institutions were in possession of slaves or came in possession of slaves.
They
so
did,
I don't know.
But even in so doing, they were still contradicting what Pope Gregory XVI had just said.
Right.
Around this time.
Yeah, and exactly right.
In fact,
exactly that time.
He called the president of Georgetown to come to Rome, and I think he had a coming to justice meeting with the Pope.
That's great. That's great.
At the time, but
by the way, that's 50 years before Leo XIII, right?
Yes.
That's 120, 130 years before Vatican II. So yeah, our popes were way out front on this stuff.
But it's showing exactly what you and I had been saying before, that this is Catholics who are contradicting the teaching of the Church on slavery, not at all unlike the way some Catholics are contradicting the teaching on abortion, the teaching on communism, the teaching on same-sex unions. Folks want to go against the Church's teaching on important moral issues, and they did it with slavery as well.
Exactly right.
They were wrong. The church's teaching was there. Folks did not obey it, including the Jesuits at Georgetown.
And the church has said, in fact, Pope Paul III in 1537, Pope Pius X, who used the phrase the worst of indignities, Pope John Paul II in 1992, speaking in Africa, really the very source of the slave trade, they all said, do you want to know who's really responsible for this, for slavery? Satan. Satan.
Yep.
This is from the devil. That's who this comes from. It doesn't come from the American founding fathers, right? It doesn't come from this party or that party, right? I mean, where this comes from is the evil one, the father of lies.
Yeah, it's key for Satan to want to take away the dignity of the human being, human person's inherent dignity. And because humans, no matter which continent they're from and what color their skin, all are made in the image and likeness of God. And Satan wants us to distort that inherent dignity placed inside us by God, and slavery is just one more of his evil tricks.
You know, I have a chapter in the book where I talk about St. Josephine Bakhita, and that follows, I talk about Venerable Pierre Toussaint, Augustus Tolton, who was probably the first black priest in America. Yes, Tolton had been a slave, Toussaint had been a slave, and I focus on those three chapters on each, and it's heartbreaking. It's also inspiring to see how they came out of this. But when people read the chapter on Bakhita, and I've had people tell me, they've said, "How did you even get through this material?" I mean, they are taking this beautiful young African girl from Sudan, this 15, 16, 17 years old, and this sadistic, diabolical slave master, slave woman, has this woman next to Bakhita and another slave girl, and they are tattooing her. The tattoo that they're doing, they're carving them up. They're carving them. They're not tattooing them. They're carving them. And then they're rubbing salt into the wounds in order to create this kind of carving tattoo. The girls are screaming. They're being held down. They're writhing in pain. They pass out from the pain. And then they're put in a room for 3 or 4 weeks where they almost die. And you read this and you think, this is satanic.
Yep.
I mean, there's no rational explanation for this. Yeah. I mean, this goes beyond hate and cruelty, and it is. I think the last time I did your show, I talked about the devil and Karl Marx, and you look at some of the things that the communists did to religious believers in the Pitești prison in Romania, in the Gulag archipelago. I mean, a lot of that's the same thing. You can't believe how cruel they are. And when you read what they did to Bakhita, it's just, you really see, I mean, that's when you hit things theologically. That's when you see where Paul III and Pius X and John Paul II saying, no, I'll tell you where this comes from. This comes from Satan. That's when it hits you, yeah, that's where it's coming from.
And we don't want to be a tool of the evil one. We have another caller online. Mike, you're calling from South Carolina. What can we do for you tonight?
Good evening, Father Mitch. I would like for you and your guests to comment on the northern states and the black laws that they passed, and I'd like to know if any of those ones that passed the laws were primarily Catholic states. They even prohibited black people from entering the states. And I'd like for you and your guests to comment on those laws.
So which states are you thinking of?
There were a number of states that passed these laws.
Yeah. Are you thinking of the laws back in the after Reconstruction, like from 1870s and especially 1880s through the 20th century. Are those the laws you're thinking of?
Well, yes, the ones that just happened after the war between the states.
Yes. Yeah. And Mike, if I can address it real quickly, and I'll turn it over to you. Catholics started coming into the United States in large numbers, especially in the 1880s and into till 1922. And, for the most part, there weren't any Catholic-dominated states until, the 20th century. So those laws mostly were passed in the Old South, and these were laws passed once the Reconstruction was over. The Republicans became very cowardly when they saw that the laws to protect black rights made them lose an election in the 1880s. They stopped caring about the issue. They cared more about elections. And so these laws got passed. Up in the North, I'm not sure how many Jim Crow laws there were. There were less of them up north. They were primarily in the South, but certainly the Supreme Court approved of it in the Plessy versus Ferguson in 1895. Paul, do you have something on that?
Well, I would add to this, but you prompted this thought. You said 1890s to around 1920. Now, my family on my mother's side, now you wouldn't know it from my last name, which is actually Polish. That's my dad's side. But my mother's side, they're Italian. They came from Calabria in southern Italy. The toe of the boot right across from Sicily, Reggio Calabria. And they came over in that first decade of the 1900s. Now, that whole area, that in itself is really telling about the whole slavery issue. That whole area was constantly under threat from Muslim pirates, the Barbary Coast, the Mediterranean, from the 1500s through the 1800s. I mean, I look back, Father Mitch, and I think, oh boy, I wish I could go back in time and live in Calabria in the 1700s with my ancestors. Well, if that would have been the case, I mean, you were constantly under threat of the Ottoman Empire coming across and conquering your city, taking your daughters as sex slaves, taking your sons as janissaries. They would take these boys back to the Muslim lands, and they would forcibly convert them to Islam, and they would bring them back to southern Italy and these other places and try to capture those areas. You could be a father from Calabria who 25 years later is being killed by your son, who's a janissary and doesn't even know who you are. That whole area was protected by the Order of Malta, the Battle of Malta, the Battle of Lepanto, right? 1550s, 1560s, and that whole era. And it had not been for those people, you could have had all of Europe falling to Islam during that period.
Sure.
Now, on the other side, let me flip over here. My father's side, they're Polish, like you, right, Father Mitch?
Right.
And the term slaves comes from the Latin slavus. All right, so the Slavs were slaves for many centuries. In fact, back in the Roman Empire, my Italian ancestors on my mother's side might well have enslaved the Slavs on my father's side at one point. And the only family connection that I have at all to slavery in the United States, this would be my dad's mother, the Flynns, Irish. They were in West Virginia. They fought in the Civil War, and they fought to stop slavery at that point. Yeah. So it really shows, I think, my own history, probably like most people listening, you dig back into your own family's roots, and you'll probably find slavery back in your own family roots in some ways you didn't expect. Again, getting to the point of just how complicated this history actually is.
And I think one of the points that Mike is making, I wouldn't suggest that the Catholic areas of the country wrote many Jim Crow laws.
Right, that's for sure.
But there
weren't enough of them.
No, but there would be a lot of racial bigotry that they didn't have when they were in Europe because they didn't have contact with African Americans. But there were plenty of Catholics who learned racial bigotry here. That was also wrong. And in the 20th century, Pope Pius XII ordered the American bishops address this and work to make it go away. We have another call. Well, I just want to get to another call before our last couple of minutes. Steve, you're calling from Oregon?
Yes, I have a question. How does the Catholic Church view sex slave children trafficking, which is happening today?
Yeah, Pope Francis has been all over this. So I mean, he's probably spoken out more against slavery than any pope in modern times because of sex trafficking in particular. And I was going to say right before that call, Father Mitch, Augustus Tolton, who was an American slave and the first black priest, some think the first black American priest, the kindly nuns and priests at his hometown parish, they couldn't find a seminary in the United States that would take him. So what did they do? They sent him to Rome. And Rome opened him with open arms because our church, being Catholic, capital C and small c, universal, we've had black people in our church for millennia. Yeah. So, our church has never been a bigoted church because it's always been a universal church. It's never been just, a European church or like an American church. It's truly a universal church.
Yeah. But I think Steve's question, in fact, is extremely important because, in fact, there are far more slaves today, numerically, than there were in the whole history of the United States. In the whole history of the slave trade, 10 to 12 million Africans were brought to the Americas, both
over
north
400
and south.
years.
And that was 12 million. Today, in the world, there are 45 million slaves.
That's the estimate.
That's the estimate. And this is a grave evil that that's one of the relevance of your book for today is not only to understand the past, but stealing somebody's freedom is as evil today. That principle holds. The Catechism teaches that. And stealing their sexual innocence is a grave evil. And it's one of the sins that cries out to heaven for revenge. And this is something that all of us have to be very clear in opposing. Paul, we only have a short time left. It's gone by much too quickly. I just want to make sure that we let people know again, this discussion is very important and for lots of reasons. And I want people to be aware of this material. It's called The Worst of Indignities, The Catholic Church on Slavery, written by our guest, Paul Kengor, PhD. You can get it at ewtnrc.com, where it is item number A312, A312. I urge you to get that and be able to engage people in serious discussions about America's past, the church's past, and how we as Christians today are going to address the present problem of human sex slavery that's going on worldwide. Paul, so sorry that we're running out of time. It was a lot of fun conversation. Thank you. We'll have you back for more. Keep writing. And for all of you, may the Lord bless you and keep you and cause his face to shine upon you and lead you in all of your ways by his peace. May Almighty God bless you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
We
Thank
can
you.
bring you Paul Kengor and all our other guests and shows because the network is brought to you by you. Keep us in between your gas bill, electric bill, and cable bill, and we'll pay our bills. Thank you.